We're talking the Vikings and the Colts. A very interesting game on this week, with both of these teams underperforming what they were hoping for last week, coming out with a loss. Vikings get routed by the Packers. Colts lose to the Jaguars in a very nice performance by Gardner Minshew. One of these teams is going 0-2. We'll see which one it is. This game is in Indianapolis and is one of the higher over-unders on the week, 48.5. Colts are actually favored to win this one by 3. I don't really know that I buy that, but I do think this will be a pretty fun game for fantasy. There's a lot of good fantasy options on both of these teams. The Vikings were, like you said, very bad against the wide receiver last week, very bad against the run. We're expecting them to be a little bit tougher against the run as the season goes on, but that secondary is going to be one that you want to exploit. Whereas with the Colts, they didn't really have a competent starter. I mean, James Robinson was okay, but they were able to keep the run game of the Jaguars pretty slow. I mean, honestly, the only reason the Colts lost last week was because Phillip Rivers kept turning the ball over in the Colts half of the field and gave Gardner Minshew a short playing field to score a touchdown on him. Other than that, the Colts were the much better team over the Jaguars last week. So this will be a really interesting battle in terms of fantasy starts. The Vikings, I feel like this concentration is super easy as well. Very similar to the Packers. You're going to start Dalvin Cook. You're going to start Adam Thielen every single week that they're healthy. Now, Mattison, you could flex if you want to. I probably wouldn't. Last week, he had 14 fantasy points in PPR. He actually had a decent amount of carries and was targeted more than Dalvin Cook in the passing game. Not really sure what that was all about. I'm not projecting that to continue. But if you need like a last-second flex start, I mean, Mattison, you could do worse than that. Kirk Cousins is also a decent start this week. I just don't know that there's going to be enough volume for him to outperform some of the other guys you might potentially be able to get on waivers, but definitely not someone I would completely ignore, especially we'll probably be talking about him in some of our DFS lineups. And then Irv Smith, didn't really do much last week. Kyle Rudolph is still there, probably not starting either the tight ends here or any of the other receiving options. I do think the Vikings defense is probably going to be a bad play until they show us that they actually have some moxie left. Now, on the Colts side, of course, we're going to be starting Jonathan Taylor. He's going to be a must-start every single week going forward, as is Nyheim Hines. Both of these guys heavily involved in both the run and the passing game. Jonathan Taylor will be the lead carrier here, but if he's still getting 3, 4, 5 targets every week, that's going to bring his ceiling up. Nyheim Hines going to be involved heavily in the Austin Eckler role there with Phillip Rivers. I mean, last year when Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler were both playing a full slate of snaps, Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon were still top 10 fantasy running backs over that back half of the season. So I could definitely see that same situation happening here with Taylor and Hines. Now, I'm not comparing Hines to Eckler from a talent perspective, but I think Rivers just finds a way to get fantasy points to his running back. So both of these guys will be great starts this week. Now, both T.Y. Hilton and Parris Campbell, also great starts against the Vikings' exploitable secondary. Both of these guys saw 9 targets last week. Parris Campbell looked phenomenal. T.Y. Hilton almost had a touchdown. Could have had a much better day. So I'm comfortable throwing him back in my lineup. He's a nice buy low this week as well. So you're starting Taylor, Hines, Hilton, and Campbell. You could start Rivers as well if you absolutely need to. He's probably going to throw too many interceptions for me to be happy, but that could also be coming from the perspective of I play in leagues where you get -4 for interceptions. So if you're in a league where you only get like -1, Rivers becomes a much better play. Jack Doyle, I mean, he could probably be worth a start as well until Trey Burton comes back. I think Jack Doyle will continue seeing a decent amount of work, but there's probably better options on the waiver wire like Logan Thomas. And then the Colts defense might be an okay play this week, but the Vikings showed last week that they can put up a lot of points pretty quickly, so probably not going to be pivoting to them. And then I'm not really starting Michael Pittman. He barely saw any usage last week, so he could be one of those guys that's going to take a little bit longer for him to assert a role here. Might need someone ahead of him to either go down to injury before he finally starts seeing a significant role here. But in terms of this game, I think it would be competitive. I think it would be back and forth. There would be plenty of work on the ground game as the game goes on. I don't expect either team to blow the other one out, so no one's going to have to completely abandon the run. But I do think the Vikings eke this one out, winning at 24-21 is my projection. That's actually below the under, but I'm still overall pretty bullish on the fantasy prospects of this game.